Welcome to HPP 690E. This is Aging in the U.S. Public Healthcare Programs. This is your week 4 video. Again, sorry with the short summer session, sometimes my videos get a little mixed up. So this is your video for parts 1 and 2 of week 4. This week we talk a lot about housing and aging in place, affordable housing, facility options, where people in the aging community live, why they make those choices. So if you've started the readings this week, you'll notice that we talk a lot about institutional options versus non-institutional options. If you take long-term care, you will learn a lot about the institutional options of long-term care and facilities that support the aging community. Those include nursing homes, assisted living, residential care, adult foster homes, boarding homes. Different states have different models of institutional options, so your state might have something slightly different on this list. One of the important things that we talk about in part 1 and part 2 of this week is that some institutions are public and some are private. You can have a nursing home or a residential care that is privately owned. It could be a non-profit or a for-profit, but many are also owned by the government. So cities, counties, states, and the federal government can own a nursing home, an assisted living, a residential care, a foster home, a boarding home, or anything like that. It's important to know the difference because usually the government-owned institutions have a lot of different rules and regulations than the privately owned. It also is important to think about these because this is really government-owned healthcare at work. So as public health students, you want to assess how that works, how it doesn't work. As we talk about government-run healthcare or privately run healthcare, we have these models that we look at to see how well it works. And then, of course, there's all the non-institutional options that the aging population has. I mean, obviously, the biggest one is staying in your own home, staying in your own condo, staying in the apartment that you've always had. There are income-based housing options, and every city and town has income-based housing options. There are aging communities, and you will see something about those in the readings this week, and those are pre-planned communities that look an awful lot like a regular neighborhood, but is actually kind of a broad use of institutional standards to create kind of a neighborhood atmosphere. And then a lot of the aging population might use things like homeless transitional housing. If you are on a fixed income and lose your home, a lot of times homeless housing or transitional housing is what supports the aging community. So one of the things I want students to come away with after week 4 is understanding how to help an aging individual talk about, think about, and discuss housing options. The most important question is, how are you going to be successful for the long term? What are your needs? What's most important to you for quality of life, to maintain your health, to maintain your finances? One of the realities is aging folks tend to be on fixed incomes, whether they are disabled and can no longer work, whether they are living on a retirement plan, whether they're getting Social Security. Usually that income becomes fixed. So we talk a lot about aging in place this week. Aging in place can sometimes crash into the idea of fixed income. And the reason for that is that costs go up every year. So we have inflation, so your groceries go up over time, your gas, your car, your property taxes go up over time, and living on a fixed income often is really hard to age in place because of that. So there are a lot of other options that tend to work with people with fixed incomes or try to keep them in their homes anyway because of that. There's also a lot of creative options I want you to look for. Folks who really want to stay at home, but it doesn't look like it work. There are a lot of programs that we talk about throughout the whole semester that can help people age in place. Two really obvious options are adult daycare. Adult daycare is kind of like child daycare, where an elderly individual would go basically to a day program while somebody else is at work or needs a break or needs to be somewhere during the day. Meals on Wheels is a huge program that you probably learned about when you were reading about the AAAs. Often a AAA is working with the Meals on Wheels program, and that's home delivered meals. These are two programs that are huge in keeping people in the house, apartment that they want to stay in. So going back to the issue of who pays, consumers pay for their housing, just like young people, unless you do an institutional option. An institutional option is often covered by Medicaid, so that state Medicaid program. And the cost is usually fixed. So people with a very tight income who often need some services in home end up in an institutional setting because that cost is covered by Medicaid. Often people want to age in place at home. As those costs go up, there become fewer and fewer options for folks to age in place. One of the really most important things from this course is understanding how we craft programs and policy to better assist the aging community in staying at home. Because as it is now, when costs go up, living in an institution makes more sense. An interesting point is that it's way cheaper, it's much less expensive for folks to age at home. It doesn't cost healthcare as much. Why? Because we're not paying for facility care. The government, the state, is paying for that. So there is a big incentive for us to work towards programs and policies that keep people in their homes. It's less expensive for all of us. As you know, apartments, homes, those range in costs, matters where you live. Income-based apartments, those are usually based on a formula of how much income you have. So 1/3, 1/4, 1/2. A rural income-based apartment could be $300. Private high-end nursing home can be $15,000. So the costs of housing, either institutional or non-institutional, are really all over the map. They can be anything. Statistics show that most consumers overwhelmingly want to be in their own home or own apartment rather than a facility, and that living in a facility costs more. So in the next decade or so, I think a lot of the conversations in aging are going to be about how do we create new and innovative programs that allow people to stay at home. And that's one of the things I want you to think about and take away from this week. I have to talk about why aging in place is so difficult, besides just being expensive, especially if you're on a fixed income. Home care is really difficult. So, having folks come in and help you with those ADLs, those activities of daily living, showering, toileting, dressing, getting in and out of bed, those IADLs, which are more like paying your bills or um, getting your groceries or cooking your meals. Those are really difficult jobs. And across the US, those providers, the people who come in to do that, are notoriously low paid. They're usually not employed as full-time workers. And those jobs have a huge turnover. So, in addition to living at home being difficult because the costs always go up, providers that come into your home, that's a very difficult job. There's really high turnover, and it's hard to maintain stability at home because of that. So I just wanted to add that. If you take my long-term care course, you would learn a lot more about that. But wanted to throw that in. So that's it for week 4. As always, I'm here for your questions, comments, and concerns. I hope that you take away a lot from senior housing options this week. It's a very important topic, and knowing generally about the various options can really help you help someone else make a decision about where they're going to age. Thanks. Have a great week.